Morning. This morning was dark and in the 20s, which isn't really a big deal, but it's just kind of abrupt from what we've had. Thought I'd get out here and have a little coffee with a touch of Kahlua in it. And you guys are helping. Yes. And read a little bit of the Tower of Babylon. And give treats to some rabbits. Here, sweetie. Good girl. Lucky. Good boy. All right. From where we left off. Copper hand-poured rabbit from Liberty Bleeds Silver. Check out his channel. Yes, they come from a land called Egypt, but they do not mine ore as you do. They quarry stone. We dig stone in Elam too, said Nani, his mouth full of pork. Not as they do. They cut granite. Granite? Limestone and alabaster were quarried in Elam, but not granite. Are you certain? Merchants who have traveled to Egypt say that they have stone ziggurats and temples built with limestone and granite, huge blocks of it. And they carve giant statues from granite. But granite is so difficult to work. Lugadam shrugged. Not for them. The royal architects believe such stoneworkers may be useful when you reach the vault of heaven. Hilalam nodded. That could be true. Who knew for certain what they would need? Have you seen them? No, they are not here yet, but they are expected in a few days' time. They may not arrive before the festival ends, though. Then you Elamites will ascend the tower alone. But you will accompany us, won't you? Yes, but only for the first 4 days. Then we must turn back while you lucky ones go on. Why do you think us lucky? I long to make the climb to the top. I once pulled with the higher crews and reached a height of 12 days' climb, but that is as high as I've ever gone. You will go far higher. Lugadam smiled ruefully. I envy you that you will touch the vault of heaven. To touch the vault of heaven, to break it open with picks. Hilalam felt uneasy at the idea. There is no cause for envy, he began. Right, said Nani. When we are done, all men will touch the vault of heaven. The next morning, Hilalam went to see the tower. He stood in the giant courtyard surrounding it. There was a temple off to the side that would have been impressive of itself, but stood unnoticed beside the tower. He could sense the utter solidity of it. According to all the tales, the tower was constructed to have a mighty strength that no ziggurat possessed. It was made of baked bricks all the way through, when ordinary ziggurats were mere sun-dried mud brick, having baked brick only for the facing. The bricks were set in a bitumen mortar, which soaked into the fired clay, forming a bond as strong as the bricks themselves. The tower's base resembled the first two platforms of an ordinary ziggurat. There stood a giant square platform, some 200 cubits on a side and 40 cubits high, with a triple staircase against its south face. Stacked upon that first platform was another level, a smaller platform reached only by the central stair. It was atop this second platform that the tower itself began. It was 60 cubits on a side and rose like a square pillar that bore the weight of heaven. Around it wound a gently inclined ramp, cut into the side, that banded the tower like a leather strip wrapped around the handle of a whip. No, looking up again, Hillelum saw that there were two ramps, and they were intertwined. The outer edge of each ramp was studded with pillars, not thick but broad, to provide some shade behind them. In running his gaze up the tower, he saw alternating bands, ramp, brick, and they could until they could no longer be distinguished. And still the tower rose up and up, further than the eye could see. Hillelum blinked and squinted and grew dizzy. He stumbled backward a couple steps and turned away with a shudder. He thought of the story told to him in childhood, the tale following that of the flood. It told how men had once again populated all the corners of the earth, inhabiting more lands than they ever had before. How men had sailed to the edges of the world and seen the ocean falling away into the mist to join the black waters of the abyss far below. How men had thus realized the extent of the earth and felt it to be small and desired to see what lay beyond. What lay beyond its borders, all the rest of Yahweh's creation. How they looked skyward and wondered about Yahweh's dwelling place, above the reservoirs that contained the waters of heaven, and how many centuries ago there began the construction of the tower, a pillar to heaven, a stair that men might ascend to see the works of Yahweh, and that Yahweh might descend to see the works of men. It had always seemed inspiring to Hillelum, a tale of thousands of men toiling ceaselessly, but with joy, for how they worked to know Yahweh better. He had been excited when the Babylonians came to Elam looking for miners, but yet now that he stood at the base of the tower, his senses rebelled, insisting that nothing should stand so high. He didn't feel as if he were on earth when he looked up along the tower. Should he climb such a thing? On the morning of the climb, the second platform was covered, edge to edge, with stout, two-wheeled carts arranged in rows. Many were loaded with nothing but food of all sorts, sacks filled with barley, wheat, lentils, onions, dates, cucumbers, loaves of bread, dried fish. There were countless giant clay jars of water, date wine, beer, goat's milk, palm oil. Other carts were loaded with such goods as might be sold at a bazaar: bronze vessels, reed baskets, bolts of linen, wooden stools and tables. There was also a fattened ox and a goat that some priests were fitting with hoods so that they could not see to either side and would not be afraid of the climb. They would be sacrificed when they reached the top. Then there were the carts loaded with the miners' picks and hammers and the makings of a small forge. Their foreman also ordered a number of carts to be loaded with wood and sheaves of reeds. Lugadim stood next to a cart, securing the ropes that held the wood. Hillelum walked up to him. "From where did this wood come? I saw no forests after we left Elam. There is a forest of trees to the north which was planted when the tower was begun. The cut timber is floated down the Euphrates River." "You planted an entire forest?" When they began the tower, the architects knew that far more wood would be needed to fuel the kilns than could be found on the plains, so they had a forest of trees planted. There are crews whose job is to provide water and plant one new tree for each that is cut. He was astonished. All that provides, and that provides all the wood needed? Most of it. Many other forests in the north have been cut as well, and their wood brought down the river. He inspected the wheels of the cart, uncorked a leather bottle he carried, and poured a little oil between the wheel and the axle. Nani walked over to them, staring at the streets of Babylon laid out before them. I have never even been this high that I can look down upon a city. Nor have I, said Hilalam, but Lugatam simply laughed at them. Come along, all of the carts are ready. Soon all the men were paired up and matched with a cart. The men stood between the carts two pole rods, which had rope loops for pulling. The carts were pulled by miners mixed in with those of the regular pullers to ensure that they would keep the proper pace. Lugatam and another puller had the cart right behind that of Hilalam and Nani. Remember, stay about 10 cubits behind the cart in front of you. The man on the right does all the pulling when you turn corners, and you'll switch every hour. And we will leave it there for now.